Do you want to expand your capacity for business during these unprecedented times? Then join the Joseph Business School's May session. For the first time ever, we are offering individual courses from our 9-month business and entrepreneurship program. Business Management. Learn how to lead through a crisis with Dr. Dolores Thomas, teaching on how entrepreneurs can successfully manage, maneuver, and recover during these uncertain times. Financial Analysis. Cash Flow Management During a Crisis with Dave Ramsor. You will learn the importance of cash flow management, identify financial control procedures, and analyze cash flow patterns to ensure that your business is financially sound. And e-commerce, e-business, and the internet. Discover a whole new world of e-commerce with Melissa Duff Brown as she gives you an understanding of the importance of creating an online presence to successfully operate and promote your business. Register for these classes and more at jbs.edu.
Welcome to Money Mondays, powered by the Joseph Business School, where we bring you up-to-date money news for your personal finances and businesses. I'm your host, Jill Thompson. Today on our segment, we're going to do things a bit different. We're going to engage our audience in a group therapy session. And what do I mean by that? Well, today we have with us Dr. Felicia M. Owens, clinical psychologist. She is currently the founder of Dr. Owens Speaks, a faith-based wellness firm devoted to helping others incorporate their faith and mental health while walking their destined plan to purpose. With more than 15 years of experience providing psychotherapy to families and communities, Dr. Owens is dedicated to transforming lives. Without further ado, Dr. Owens, welcome to Money Mondays.
Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure. Dr. Owens, we brought you on our podcast to help us stay mentally healthy during this time of crisis. We've considered the cost of the coronavirus, and primarily many of our experts, as well as our commentators, first thoughts are always about the plummeting stock market or even how the global economy is affected. However, we avoid the main statistics, which I believe are important to us as a nation, which is hitting home, which is the fact that over 71% of American households are unhealthy, that we have reached unemployment numbers that are the highest since the Great Depression of about 13%, and that over 69% of the United States households have less than $1,000 in their savings account. If you don't mind, can we go into a therapy session to really discuss these patterns as well as behaviors as to what has drove us to this place and how can we overcome it?
Absolutely. Right at the beginning of the year, right, we were going into our new year, 2020. We were all excited. And then all of a sudden, COVID-19, right, came and just kind of stopped all of us in our tracks, interrupted our lives. And now we are forced to be at home. We have to stay at home order. And I think what is important to think about is, while we understand that we are staying at home to be safe, that doesn't come without its effects. That doesn't come without its impacts. So that's where I think we can probably begin to talk about the impacts on our mental health, not just our physical health, but the impact that COVID-19 has had on our mental health.
And I think oftentimes what happens is we may have high moments where we're in a peak, and then sometimes we've heard the Bible say that we're in that valley, that low place. But what is an encouraging word to many of our Money Monday audience is the fact that the seasons don't always last.
Yeah.
And so I think what's important is that we drive home the fact of that these seasons don't last, but let's also hit home as to what can we be doing in order to keep our minds alert, keep our minds focused, where we focus on the things that are important to us right now, and not necessarily focusing on our current situation or current state, the fact that you cannot leave your home. And so what I want you to do is, can you ask us questions as part of this therapy session as to what should we be thinking about in this season? What are some questions you would ask us if Money Mondays were a person and we came into your office today? And so we're like, hey, doc, COVID is hit currently right now. There's some issues financially that are happening. Sometimes maybe it's that statistic of the person who has less than $1,000 in their bank account. How do we go about navigating? Because sometimes we don't even know what to ask ourselves.
Yeah. Well, you're right. Oftentimes we don't know what we don't know, right? So the first thing I think we would kind of discuss, well, for one, is still that acknowledgement, please, that reflection of, hey, understanding that this has hit home for so many people. This has affected so many lives, it has interrupted so many lives. So first of all, understanding that, this is different. But I think really kind of trying to see where that individual is, because this is a mindset shift, right? There has to be a mindset shift here, because there were things that were once in our control that are now out of our control, if that makes sense. Right. We would be able to control getting up, going to work, going outside, or doing these things, or our finances. But now these things are out of our control. So this sense of this loss that we are all experiencing, I think that's something to kind of talk about, to get you all to think about this loss that comes with this, that we all are experiencing, that we have lost this sense of our freedom, this sense of our autonomy, this sense of control, right? So that's a major loss that we would start to discuss. And how is that loss affecting you, right? Because it's affecting each of us in a different way. So I think the major question would be, hey, let's talk about how this is affecting you personally, your reality, right? Not mine, not your sisters, not your mothers, but how this is affecting your particular reality.
So, Doc, in distress situations, oftentimes we see that people kind of gravitate to a survival mode. There are a lot of six-figure earners and even seven-figure earners that are right now primarily standing in food lines, asking for food at pantries, where this was never the norm for them. But to go to another extent, there's business owners who themselves right now are taking out stimulus loans just to think about not only themselves, but they're thinking about their employees that work for them, just so that they can make sure that the doors stay open and that people have a sufficient amount of income coming in as we go through this pandemic. And so as we talk about this survival mode, how do you navigate whether people are making wise financial decisions, or are you making emotional decisions based off a current state or situation that you're in?
Jill, I think that's a really, really good question, because at where we are, a lot of us may very well be in survival mode, where we have to make decisions based on our current situation, right? Whereas we may not be able to, for instance, the stimulus check that the government gave, I would hear a lot of people say, oh, don't spend that money, invest in that money. And while that may be good for some people, that may be ideal for, oh yeah, this would be great if I can put this money in a IRA or a CD, or I can put this money in my savings account and not touch it. However, because of the current state that I'm in right now, this has to be utilized for that. So I may not be able to fix my credit with that money, or I may not be able to, put this money in a savings and let it invest because of the situation that I'm in. So I think it's going to be important for us to realize, what this COVID-19, this impact that it has placed on people financially, which has indeed put them in a mode of survival where it's, hey, I have to make ends meet. And for some people, it's not just me. It's not just for my family. It's for my employees as well, right? You know, if I'm going to decide between putting, what was it, $2,200 or $1,200 into a CD and stocking up my groceries for 2 months, then I'm going to have to stock up my groceries for 2 months, right? Because again, there's also, you know, this unknown to this, right? We don't necessarily know when business will open back as usual. We don't know that. And then will they open back the same way, right? So there's still these elements of the unknown that allow that means we have to make the decision that's best for the situation that we're in right now. And there is nothing wrong with that. That may not necessarily mean that I'm making an emotional decision, right? Or I'm making the wrong decision because I'm choosing not to invest in this money. Now, it's different. You know, I'm not saying go out and, you know, just blow this money and shopping and doing all that, but realizing that, hey, we are indeed in a pandemic and we are in survival mode. And what does that look like for so many people? Hey, I don't have time to think about financial growth right now. I don't have time to think about, you know, what I can do with this money at right now, because I may have unemployment, but you know, unemployment is usually only a percentage of what you were getting with your check, correct? Right. You know, usually unemployment is not
the full amount,
right? The full amount of your rent. So even you may be getting some source of income is already lower. Right. So this is not the time to say, maybe for some people, it may not be the time to say, hey, you need to think about your financial future, or you need to think about, you know, what you're going to do with this unemployment money, because I have to survive. I mean, now I still have income coming in, but it's less than what I had coming in. And now my expenses have increased because, again, where my daughter and my child was eating school lunch at school for free, I have to budget it in my groceries. So where I was spending $100 on groceries a month, I'm spending $250 a month, right? So my expenses have increased. So, you know, maybe now is not the time to think about, I need to, for some people, right, to think about, I need to be, I need to invest, at least take a portion of this stimulus in effect. That may not be everybody's reality. And we don't want anybody to feel bad or feel guilty or feel shameful for one, that they are on unemployment, right? That they had to take this. Because remember what we talked about before, this is our hope is this will pass. What we know, I ain't gonna say our hope is in Christ, but what we know is that this too shall pass, right? But not feeling the shame of having to, you know, if there is already a shame of having to be on welfare for the first time, or having to have some type of governmental assistance for the first time, right? Let's not add on to that shame by saying, oh, well, you need to be doing something else with that money, or you need to be growing with that money. I think everybody is concerned about their financial future. I think a lot of people are concerned about what the future will hold, but again, they still need to live in the reality of it right now today.
Is isolation a state of mind?
Well, you know, I think it's both.
If a person says I'm isolated, I feel isolated from the world.
Well, there's some reality to that, right? Because we are in isolation, right? We are in this aspect of social distancing does have us where some of us are isolated from the outside world. You know, some of us are practicing social distancing home alone, right? Many of us may not have a significant other, children, or family members that are at home. So I believe that there is a reality that isolation is very, very real, but then we can also help to adjust the mindset where, meaning that, you know, you can be in social distancing without disengaging.
Okay. And so how does a person who lives alone, who's that individual? So we want to let's start the session with talking to specifically that individual who's like, hey, well, maybe I don't have the family or the children, but I have been feeling these feelings of isolation. How do I adjust my behavior as well as my mindset while being at home, where I feel as though I'm engaging with the outside world, but I don't feel this sense of loneliness?
What I think is to take a try to dig into how they're thinking about this, right? You know, like this whole mindset, you know, how they are thinking, their perception of this. You know, you hear people say, oh, I'm stuck at home. No, you're not stuck at home. You're safe at home, right? You know, so how they are viewing this whole pandemic, you know, oh, when I'm stuck in a house, or, you know, yes, I can go outside, you know, I can walk around the block. So I think thinking about their very perception of this, that's what's going to be most important. You know, one thing I would ask, hey, how are you perceiving, you know, this entire ordeal, right? How are you perceiving the stay-at-home order? You know, do you feel like, you know, you are in a place where you can't interact with one another, or, you know, you can't go outside and walk around the block? You know, how are you engaging in that? But then also, I think what's going to be important is, you know, to see some type of way that they can kind of interact with their family members, right? You know, we have all of this technology, right? We have all of this technology, and that's a way that it's able to keep us together, or to keep us connected. So, you know, once we kind of talk to them about how they're perceiving this, because, you know, if you're perceiving this like you're stuck at home, then you're going to react that way. Right. If you're perceiving this like, you know, this is a violation of my rights, or I'm lonely, or I don't have anybody, or this is the end of the world, you're going to react that way. But if you're perceiving this like, okay, I am safe at home. Yes, maybe I have to figure out other ways to interact with people that are not ways that I have been accustomed to, right? You know, yes, maybe I can't drive over to see my elderly mother, but I can FaceTime her, you know, I can Zoom her, or I can talk with her more. So, you know, thinking about resources that you would normally use to kind of help you to kind of get more into that social engagement type of piece.
You know what, Doc, as you were talking, one thing that I thought about is the fact that oftentimes, I think, and you could correct me, is that it feels as though an aspect of human behavior is we don't like change. And so when it seems like there's anything that comes to disrupt what we classify as our normal reality, it seems as though we fight. There's a wrestling that takes place on the inside, because it's not what we may have envisioned. It's not what we wanted our life to look like. It's not what we thought would be our norm. And so, of course, we're believing that, of course, the pandemic itself would end very soon. But how do you address the fact of, if this is the new norm, how do you break out of what is the reality? How do I begin to shift my thinking as to what if the new normal is I have to wear a mask every time I go outside from now on?
Yeah, well, you're right. You know, you're absolutely right. Change is something that it's hard for a lot of people because it's unknown, right? It's the fear of the unknown. Like you said, it is something that we have never done before. We have never seen before. And oftentimes, you know, we get in a normal routine of life and we get comfortable because it works, right? You know, because it has been working. So change is oftentimes a difficult process, but when it comes into kind of changing the mindset, you know, it's kind of like one of those things where now this is the time to kind of really dig into our faith and start to feed our faith in areas where, you know, there may have been other areas that have been unknown to us, right? Or seasons do change, right? You know, things don't last always, you know. As I was thinking about this pandemic, I was thinking about, oh, wow, I wonder if if this is how it must have been, you know, when there was the measles or there was the Spanish flu, you know, or there were all these different plagues, if you will, that have come upon the world that, of course, we weren't probably born, you know, at that time. Like, okay, seasons change, things change. It will not always be like this. Absolutely. Does it carry its losses? Absolutely. Right. But again, if we get into this mindset, for one, that seasons do change, but then if we tap into our faith, believing that, hey, all things work together for my good, right? That's one of my favorite scriptures, Romans 28. So what I'm believing is, hey, despite of all of this, despite of the unknown, despite of the losses, despite of my uncomfortableness in this, that this is going to work out for my good, and it shall pass.
And I think what you're saying, Doc, is it's imperative, because what we think about many times, what we do here at Money Mondays is we talk about how faith ties into just about every area of our lives.
Yeah.
And our lives. And I think that oftentimes when it seems like crises come up, or when there's tribulation, or there's, the Bible calls it trials and tribulations, that oftentimes our bodies have this, our minds, I won't say our bodies, but our bodies follow our minds. And it has the ability to want to slip back into what we believe is comfortable, rather than trying to figure out a way of how we can progress through this.
Yeah. Well, absolutely. You're absolutely right. That's just kind of a natural tendency, because like you said, it is comfortable, right? Moving forward or a change, oftentimes that's a difficult process because we don't know what to do. And in this particular situation with the COVID-19, we don't know what the world will look like, after this, right? All we know is, okay, well, yes, right now we're, as of today, actually, we'll be May 1st, we'll be wearing a mask, right? We have to wear a mask, or we have to take all of these precautions, but there is such an unknown to this, right? That it's easier to deal with the familiar. Well, I'll just stay here, right? I'll just stay right where I am. It's easier to deal with the familiar than it is to venture out into the unknown, because we don't know what that brings. We don't know what that brings. So it's easier. So absolutely, you're absolutely right. It's easier to just kind of retract, because I know this, right? I don't know what's ahead of me. I know this. I even know what's behind me because I just came through it, right? So I know this area. This is a safe zone for me. So I think because this is so much of this is still unknown, it still comes with this uncertainty, right? This anticipation that, we don't know what it brings. So it's easier to stay within our comfort zone and just remain where we are.
Yeah. Doc, what have you been seeing right now as far as any cases primarily that have come into your office, as to what are some things people are asking you to help to counsel them through?
Well, I think one of the major things that has been coming through is the loss that has been associated with this, right? The loss of loved ones, right? That's been something major that has been so unexpected. And not just the loss of loved ones, but the inability to grieve appropriately for those loved ones. I think that's been something that's been just a major, trying to wrap their head around the fact that we are in this pandemic, that this is the world right now, that we have been in a shelter in place order for over 30 days, right? That people are protesting, right? The people are upset, or people are dying, or, it's like out of a scene of outbreak, of a movie, right? So people, I think the major loss that they can't really put their words to, right? They can't really articulate it, because some people, again, haven't been affected directly, meaning they haven't gotten the virus, or they may not know anyone that has gotten it personally, but the global loss, right? The loss that the world is facing is having a major impact on the mood of individuals, right? They're coming in with more anxiety, and they're coming in with more depression, right? So that's been the major things that that's been coming into my office.
Yeah. And as you were talking about the global impact, I know often we've brought it up before on our previous episodes of Money Mondays, is fear. And so we oftentimes we've talked about how fear is the main crippler that's kind of paralyzing a lot of people within their homes.
Yes.
And it's fear of going outside, fear to even go get groceries. It's like, you need to feed yourself. It's like, pick your bed up and go walk. And it's like fear of just everyday life. It's like this spirit of fear. It's almost like a hovering cloud that has come over many people. And so it's like, what I'm asking for you is how do we get to a place where we begin to clear the cloud?
Yeah. Well, I think, one of the things that I've been hearing, people have been telling everybody, oh, not to fear, oh, erase that fear, but fear is a very natural reaction to this, right? This does bring some fear, right? There is a certain level of natural fear that is unavoidable with this pandemic, right? This fear of what tomorrow may bring. What if I don't for instance, for small businesses, what if I can't recover from this, right? What if I, can't find another job, so I think fear is a natural component of this, and we have to allow ourselves to feel it, right? Because the more we try to suppress it, right, the more it'll manifest in other ways, right? It'll manifest in other ways. So I think that's first and foremost. Before we can try to clear it, we have to allow ourselves to feel it and be okay with feeling like, okay, well, yeah, this virus does bring some fear. However, right, this is again where we can feed our faith now, right? We can feed our faith over that fear, right? We don't try to erase it. We don't try to push it around, or we just feed our faith over it. It's just kind of like you got two things. When you feed something else decreases, right? So when you increase your faith, you're going to decrease that fear. And it was just like what you were saying, now it's time to choose how you're going to respond to it, right? And that's, to me, what feeding your faith is. Hey, I am going to choose and agree with God. Period. Right. I am going to choose the Lord. I'm going to choose to believe in his word, to know that, again, like I said, this is going to work out for my good, to know that that I am abiding in his secret place. Right. I am going to feed the word of God over my fear. I'm not going to just try to bury it. I'm going to allow myself to have it, but then I'm going to choose to not let it win over me. Right. Yeah. I'm going to choose to not let it dominate my life. Right. It's like, you can't have, you just can't say, oh, well, I don't fear for this. Come on, everybody is fearing, right? We all, some of us know elderly people in our families or our small children. You're right. Some people are not even going outside, so there is this fear of it. But then it comes down to how we respond, right? How we respond to it. And I think what's going to be important is that we respond well, right? We respond to now, when I think about the stages of this pandemic, I think, there's this survival stage, right? Right when the pandemic is I just got to get by the day, right? I just need to get through this work, get through my family. I just need to get by. I'm just trying to make it. And then there comes this, as you kind of matriculate through that, you start to come through with this acceptance, like, okay, like, okay, I can fuss and I can fight this. We are on a safe at home order, and we are going to be in the house for a while. So let me just kind of accept it. Remember, all of this is a choice, right? All of this is me shifting I'm choosing to do this, right? To say, hey, okay, you know what? I am going to accept the fact that, hey, I am safer at home. And then coming into the growth of it. Okay, what can I be doing in this time, right? And that's a choice, right? I can choose to say, I'll be defeated by this, and I'm just going to let this fear overtake me. Or I can choose to say, hey, what are some things, this whole mindset thing to say, hey, you know what are some things that I can start to get out of this, right? If I am at home, maybe was this a time for reset for me? Can I realign some things, right? Can I think about how I was speaking to one of my clients, and I was like, this is such a beautiful opportunity. We kind of coming out of the first quarter, going into the second, this is such a beautiful opportunity to say, hey, you know what was going on in the first quarter that maybe I can readjust, maybe I could shift, right? What were some things that I was doing that I can reevaluate and maybe try again? What were some things that I was doing that I just need to stop doing, right? How can I do this? Because I am going to choose to believe, because I believe that this is going to work out for my good, and this is not unto the end of us, right? That this too shall pass. So because I think that, I can start to think about those things a little differently now. But again, it's a choice, right? It's how I choose to respond. Again, not saying, not deflecting that we have this fear or that it comes upon you, right? Because sometimes, the way that the body works, there's nothing you can do about it, how it comes on you. But what you can do is you do have a choice in how you choose to respond to it.
And so what I like you said there, Doc, is that sometimes this could be a season of reset. And so, and just thinking about that reset, also it could be a time or a season for rest. Yes. And so can you talk to the person who's like, well, maybe it's like, because I know one thing a lot of people are doing, and they're pivoting in this moment. They're like, hey, I'm a pivot. I'm going to come out with a business. I'm going to come up with this or come up with that. But sometimes I know that you told me that sometimes people just need rest. And it's okay with just resting in this season.
Well, I think what's going to be important for that, Jill, is to not let anyone kind of speak to or judge your level of productivity during this time, right? Because it's going to look different for everybody else. And that's where, again, I'm going to choose to kind of sit back and say, hey, God, let me look at my reality and what is it that I should be doing, right? Because you're absolutely right. For me, this may be my season of rest because I was working 2 jobs. I wasn't coming home for, till 7 or 8 o'clock at night, or I was going to school and I barely saw my children. So this for sure may be a season to rest for me. But for some others, this may be a season for them to write the book, right? This may be a season for them to shoot out their business. But again, it's about kind of honing in to what your reality is, right? What you should be doing at that time, and not letting anybody, or, there's so much happening over the social media world, right? There's, which is wonderful, so many free classes, free educational classes, all, free workout classes, just all these things that you can absolutely do. And sometimes, we feel like, well, I shouldn't be sitting idly, right? I should be doing something. I should be losing weight, or I should be, all those things are great. But I think is the most important thing is, hey, looking at your reality to say, what is it that I need to be doing right now, right? This may indeed be a rest season for me. I definitely think that it's okay to give ourselves grace, right? We are in a pandemic. So today, if the only thing I had strength to do today was to lay down or take a nap in the midday, that's okay, right? I don't have to set these major unrealistic goals because I'm feeling the pressures of, I have to come out of this some way, right? Yes, there is a way that we can decide how we want to come out of this, but I definitely think, we should take advantage of the periods where we can rest, right? Where we can get some sleep, right? The things that, somebody was telling me, I saw something on Facebook and somebody was saying, while they are mourning the loss of this pandemic, they was like, well, God answered my prayer. This was something that I've been asking the Lord to allow me to get some rest. Definitely not like this. But the point of it is that, hey, think about, has this been something that I've been needing, right? The rest, right? And then once I can get that, I can still be productive. So I can still hold both of them. I can still rest and I can still be productive. It doesn't have to be one or the other. I do not have to be doing something every second of the day.
It kind of reminds me of, I was watching a commercial the other day, and I can't remember exactly if the lady was eating a cookie or she was eating a piece of chocolate, but basically she had went in the bathroom and she locked the door and she was sitting on her bathroom floor and she just wanted to have her cookie, just her own little private moment to herself. And in the commercial, her son or daughter was knocking on the door like, "Mommy, are you in there?" And so she was like hiding the bag, like, this is just for me. But
absolutely.
I know that there's a positive light in all of this. And so let's talk to the people who they're like, well, I'm really not experiencing a lot. There's not too much dramatically that's happening within my own life that I've been affected where it's affecting me financially, even though these are very real situations. And so we do want to provide resources for those who may be experiencing some things at home that have shifted their new normal. And so we'll provide those resources at the end of the show. But let's talk to the person who is at home. And so they're now in that space of, I want to write the book. I'm ready to open the business. I'm ready to take my next level. And so how do they go about prioritizing their thoughts, prioritizing the new norm, in essence, to conquer new land or take new territory?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a very, very good question. And again, from what you're saying, it sounds like, that they're in a position that they've kind of accepted that this is just what it is, right? Again, that's always, I can't say that enough, of the acknowledgement, right? Acknowledging where we are at the different periods, because that may look different, right? The stages of this whole pandemic and the stages of our moods, that may look different at any given day. So if they're saying, hey, I'm ready to do this, what I'm hearing is them saying, hey, okay, I am responding well to this, right? That this is a new normal for me. So I want to start to write the book. And really the first, because we can still do goals here, right? So I think the first thing to start to do is to start to kind of make a plan, right? Make a plan. What is it that I want to have done, and what, and how me to, a realistic plan. Let me say that. So what is it that I want to have done, and what amount of time, right? Because again, we are still in a pandemic, right? So although we may be motivated to write the book, we may be encouraged, we may be ready, we still don't know what tomorrow will bring, right? We still don't know that. We still don't know when COVID-19 will hit our household, or will start to affect us a little more directly. Certain things are still unknown, if that makes sense. So I think it still has to be done step by step, not necessarily, now we're in, the month of May, maybe not say, okay, in the month of May, I'm going to have this book done by the end of the May. Take it in segments. Okay, from May 1st to May 5th, this is what I want to have done. This is what I want. This is how I want it. And sometimes it may be from May 1st to May 2nd.
Yeah.
Right? It may be from May 1st at 1:00 p.m. to May 1st at 3:00 p.m. Right? It goes back to what I was saying with knowing your reality. Right now, if you're at home alone, then it may be easier for you to kind of write consistently, or, kind of produce consistently. But if you're still juggling these things, but you still feel like, okay, well, I still feel like I hear the Lord saying, or I feel the urge to write a book or to start my podcast, I think this is a perfect time for me to do that. You still have to take it step by step, right? Day by day, even. So I think really, really coming into the terms of, okay, what is it? What does all this look like for me with everything I got going on in my household? When can I designate a time to write and stick with that, right? And it may be once the children, one thing I decided to do, I try not to do any work on my off day when the children are at school, because I know I'm not going to get anything done, right? So for me, it's okay, well, maybe I'll take a nap, and then I'll have to work the after hour shift when they're in bed. So I'll try to get them in bed at a reasonable hour so I can have 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock till 12, right? But that's my reality. Someone else's reality may be, hey, my house is only the quietest at 8 o'clock in the morning, so I need to get up early to accomplish this goal, right? So it's just really about looking at what your reality is, being able to say, okay, this is what's going to work for me, and drowning the outside pressures. I think that's so important, because if you go on the social media, everybody is talking about how productive they are. I'm part 2 of my book, 3rd book, everybody, which is wonderful, but those pressures can make you kind of feel the need to perform, which will potentially increase your anxiety, right? Which will potentially increase your level of stress, because you feel, oh my God, we're going to be out of this shelter in place in 30 days. I need to have this done, right? But really, really think about, what is it that I can have done and still feel productive?
I'm thinking about the fact that we as people, oftentimes, we've been taught to go to your doctor annually. You go for your annual checkup. But one of the main areas that we oftentimes overlook, I would say that many of us do, is how important our mental health is. And as we're navigating this pandemic, how important would you say is our mental health as we go forward?
Well, I think it's crucial, right? Because what I think you're going to start to see is people who may say, hey, I've never experienced, this intense sadness or any type of mental health issues up until COVID-19, right? So I think you're definitely going to start to see probably an increase of that because of the effects of it, right? Because of the loss of it, because of how it has interrupted our lives. It has changed how we can grieve, right? The funerals you can't do anymore. That the way that we celebrate our loved ones, the way that we celebrate homegoing services has been changed. Birthdays, absolutely.
Baby showers,
weddings, everything. The way that we have known life has been changed, and actually, in some cases, it has been traumatic, right? So in some cases, a lot of us have been kind of experiencing something very, very traumatic. So I think we're going to start to see kind of the increase of that. But what I think is going to be important is to be able to be okay with, okay, something is changing. And what is good to know is, hey, how is it affecting my functioning? So there's a difference between a sadness and a clinical depression, right? So there's a normalcy to feel, like I talked about before, there's a normalcy to feel in fear. There's a normalcy to feel in sadness. But when it starts to affect your functioning, right, where, okay, it's been 5 days and I can't get out of the bed, or I'm having these thoughts of suicide or different things like that, then now maybe it's time to reach out. Right. So I think what I would want the people to know, that if you have never reached out to a mental health professional, a licensed mental health professional, a counselor, a pastor, that it is okay to do that now, because life for you is different and it may not ever be the same.
What would you say are some reasons as to why you may have seen in your own professional career as to why people don't see the need for an evaluation of our emotions and our mindsets, where we will go to the annual checkup for the doctor, but we don't consider just how we're doing emotionally or how our mind is in this season? What would you say are some reasons as to have been some stigmas as to why people don't want to consult a mental health professional?
Well, I think you said the very word. It's the stigma of the mental health, right? It's the stigma of, if I reach out to see a psychiatrist or a psychologist or a therapist, then something is wrong with me, right? So it would be the admittance that something is wrong with me, or I'm crazy. That would be a lot of things that I would hear, even in my research, especially in certain cultures. The number one reason that they don't want to come, not just financially, but hey, there's nothing wrong with me. I'm not crazy. I don't need to see a psychiatrist, or I don't need to see a counselor. So I think that's been the stigma around what we are here to do, right? Not that, okay, well, yeah, it's not, you don't come to see me when just because something is necessarily wrong. But again, you come to see me when, you may, okay, you know what, I can't figure out why I'm so tense, or I can't figure out why I'm so stressed, or I've been having these panic attacks and I can't figure out what this is, or I've been sad for a few days. So it's not necessarily that you're crazy or you won't be able to function or you will be labeled. I think that's the major reason that people choose not to come, to a psychologist or a counselor, because of fear of being labeled as crazy, fear of being labeled as something is wrong with you. You're an outcast, right? Oh, you have to go see a shrink, fear of being talked about, fear of being ridicule. I think that's one of the major reasons. Gratefully, I think it is changing now, but I think that's been some of the major reasons that people have been afraid to come, because in their mind, I don't need to come. Nothing is wrong with me.
So, Dr. Owens, this major concept of grief that many are experiencing right now, are you able to provide tips as to how they can begin to start coping in this season?
Yes, well, Jill, I think what's really, really important is to talk about how grief is different now, right? How the impact of what we are experiencing is different, right? Because not only do you have, your traditional grief, maybe a loss of a loved one, right? But you have just kind of the loss of your autonomy, right? There's so many losses that are bringing about grief, right? And then even thinking about how we grieve, right? That's been affected as well. We haven't been allowed to grieve the same way, right? We think about our healthcare workers. We think about how they have been affected by this virus. They are seeing losses every single day. So that might be a type of vicarious grief, where it may not necessarily be a family member of theirs, but it's a life, right? They're losing a soul in a sense, right? So all of these are ways that we have been experiencing grief that looks a lot different than what we traditionally know it. So some of the advice that I can give is, for one, allowing ourselves to recognize the stages of grief. We have these stages of grief, right? And they are not, consecutive. We don't go, it's not 1 through 5 and we go in chronological order, but, being able to allow yourself to be in the process of the anger, the denial, right? The acceptance, and I was also reading, there's new research that they're going to try to add another step to grief of the meaning, right? Finding the meaning behind it. But that's only after we allow ourselves to go through the process of it, right? So to one, recognize that, hey, I may be feeling angry today. I'm angry, for instance, for healthcare workers. I may be feeling angry today. I'm angry that people are not staying home, right? I'm angry that people are protesting the stay-at-home order because they are on the front of the lines, right? They are seeing this virus in a way that many of us don't see it, right? They are seeing them in that way. So a part of their grief is anger, right?
Yeah.
I'm angry because here I am, seeing body after body after body, and people are protesting the stay-at-home order. So there's a part of anger to that. There's a part of anger that they are not able to save these people, right? That sometimes that this virus is kind of attacking people so heavy, or attacking people so much that, all of their measures, what they want to do is save people, that they have not been able to do that with everybody. So there's the anger, and then there's also the sadness to that. So I think being able to recognize that all of these feelings are part of the cycle, are part of the stage cycle, and allow yourself to go through that process, and then still to reach out, to reach out to someone, because you sometimes can't do it alone, right?
Yeah.
To reach out to someone to talk about, hey, I am not okay right now. Right. I
Yeah.
am not okay. And again, even if it's not a mental health professional, while we would prefer it to be, if you don't want to talk to someone in person, like a co-worker, everybody has an online platform now. There are hotlines, there are, online therapists, there are even a psychiatrist, even your medical doctor, right? If you don't feel comfortable with talking to someone face to face, meaning like the first responders, some of their co-workers, get online, get to some of these resources where you can kind of call a hotline and say, hey, I'm just not doing okay. There are 24-hour hotlines where people are able to talk to you at 3 a.m. in the morning.
Yeah, that's
right?
good, Doc.
Because sometimes people may feel that, hey, I'm not able to, I don't feel this overwhelmingly sense of sadness or anger until the wee hours of the morning or in the middle of my shift, where I feel like I can't go on, right? There are people that are still available 24 hours of the day. So that would be my encouragement to them, is to realize that that it is a cycle, and all of these feelings are a part of that grief cycle, but to also, hey, reach out, get a hotline number, reach out to someone, even if it's 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, right? Make a connection with your family members, make a pact with people that you love to say, hey, can I call you with no questions asked? I think all of us, because we are unable to be available to people like we normally would be, like, for instance, the way that we do funerals now, right? That has been such a major loss of the way that we celebrate the life of our loved ones who have gone on to be with the Lord. That has been a major loss. We can only have 10 people. And then who decides what 10 people come? I mean, what if I got 20 sisters and brothers? Who decides what 10 people can help celebrate the life of my loved one? Who decides that, right? And what about the celebration of food, right? What about the celebration of the repast, is what we call it, right? Where we all come together and we eat and we comfort one another. All of those things have been lost, right? All of those things have been adjusted. All of those things have been shifted. So the way that we grieve is different. So another tip to do is to make a pact with your family members, with your loved ones, to say, hey, can I call you when I need you, even if it's in the midnight hour? And I know that's cliche, because we could call on Jesus in the midnight hour. Absolutely. But can I call a loved one, right? And say, hey, I know it's 3 a.m. I don't mean to wake you, but I'm not doing well. I just needed someone to talk to, right? I just needed someone, or I'm having a hard time with this loss. So I think that's something that's going to be very, very crucial that we'll be able to do in this time, because it is different. We may not be able to touch physically. I even saw on Facebook, they are like having funerals on Facebook Live. That's something that's been unheard of. We've never seen a thing to do like that. So to be able to make sure we have someone that we can join with, right? Even if it's via social media, to join with, even if it's via the cell phone, right? Even if it's in the middle of the night, to have a pact with someone or somebody to say, hey, when I am down and out, can I call you? Because sometimes we won't, because we feel like we're going to be a bother to somebody.
Doc, on a lighter note, I do like that how what has happened is because of the pandemic, there have been many families who are coming together as a community, where I've seen several listings or articles on Facebook where there may have been a woman in a grocery store who thought that she had money on her debit card and didn't have a sufficient amount. And maybe the person behind her said, well, I'll pay for my groceries and hers. We see companies like McDonald's or I believe even Wendy's, are several different fast food chains who are now rallying where healthcare workers don't even have to pay for lunch. As long as they show their IDs, they can eat for free. And so what I do believe is happening is there is, in the midst of all of what's happening, and we can oftentimes look at it from a negative perspective, there are a lot of positive things that are happening right now that are bringing us together as a community where we're all looking to lift the other one up or support in some way. And so I know oftentimes we always talk about, if you oftentimes have a need, then sow a seed. And so in this moment, I know that a lot of people, if you have abundance, this is a great opportunity for you to look out for your brother, you know, for you to look out for your sister who may not have anything. And if you have a neighbor who doesn't have food, then provide them with food. If you see someone who may be hungry on the street, then provide them food as well. And so I myself, you know, just talking with my family, we were thinking about that there are a lot of people who do rely on the system, especially the elderly who do not have food. And I know my sister, she's a nurse. She just recently told me that she was visiting a lot of different nursing homes and she was buying food for those who could not go out to the grocery stores themselves because of their inability to be mobile. And so there are a lot of people who are rallying around, how can we be a community and how can we help each other?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. You know, these acts of kindness, right? I think that goes along the line with finding meaning in this, right? You know, that because it is such a global, it is such a communal, you know, a community loss that, you know, we can choose to find meaning in this and to give, right? There's still ways that we can give in this. You know, there has been some things that people are doing on Facebook. Some of the things that people are doing on Facebook, I see the small business owners, like, you know, maybe the hairstylists or the, you know, the barbers that are not at work. I have seen people just sow seeds into them, right? You know, people that, you know, because at some point, you know, we might want to go back outside and get our hair done and get our nails done. But I've seen people that when they were able, sow seeds into these individual lives because they realize, okay, well, you know, they're not working and, you know, I want to be a blessing. So absolutely, you know, this is a perfect time to, and it goes back again to how we're choosing to respond to this, right? You know, this is a perfect time that if you are able, right, you can choose to respond in a giving way. You can choose to say, well, you know what, I feel led to just bless somebody with some groceries today, right? You know, I have a little extra money, and I know that's hard for people because we don't, you know, even the people that have extra money, it may feel hard too because we don't know what tomorrow may bring, and we're scared to spend any extra money on anybody because what about me? I have to survive, you know, that whole survival mode thing. But I promise you, you know, like you said, this whole concept of giving to receive, I promise you, if you are able, you know, that will go a long way to bless someone. And then to be in the place that you can be a blessing to someone, what meaning, right? What that can be a shift in the mood altogether, even if it's just $15, if it's $5. Some people, when they were doing the challenge on Facebook, people were blessing their barbers and hairstylists with $1. Because if everybody, you know, if so, for instance, if you're a stylist and if you got 500 friends, and if everybody give you a $1, right? That's something. So it's so if you think about it, don't look at it like, oh, well, this is going to be hard for me. Look at it like, hey, if we all come together collectively, then we can make a huge positive impact.
Yes. And so, Money Monday audience, in this season, your perspective is imperative. Take the high road. There's always an opportunity for us to be a blessing. For those of you who do need additional help and resources, we made this show just for you because, of course, we're thinking about you. We know that everyone may not have it in this season. And so we wanted you to know that we are mindful of you and your family in this season. There are going to be resources that will provide you guys again at the end of the show. Make sure you check out the link. Contact your local ministry, your local churches. There are people who are there to assist you. And as always, you can surely feel free to contact Money Mondays. If there's anyone that we know or any resources that are available that come our way, we are more than happy and willing to pass those resources along. But for those of you who do have more than enough and in abundance, be a blessing in this season. The Bible says, who gives to the poor lends to the Lord, and he will repay you. There is more than enough opportunities for us to lend a helping hand and be the light that shines and shows God's glory. So we thank you, Dr. Owens, for coming on our podcast today.
Thank you.
This has been very fruitful. It's been awesome. I'm glad that you were able to come in and do a therapy session with us, because sometimes we need a little mind check. We need to check ourselves out to say, guess what? Things aren't as bad as they appear. It's all about my perspective. And if God is still keeping me, I'm in good health, I have money, I have food, then let me learn and let me extend a hand and be the hands and feet of Jesus where I can bless someone else in this season. We appreciate you for taking the time to come on our show. And for those of you who do seek some professional assistance as far as getting some counseling or even contacting a therapist, Dr. Owens is a great resource. We will provide her information in the lower third below. Feel free to contact her, because I understand sometimes it's just a matter of we don't know where to go or who to contact. She's a great resource, but not just a resource, but she has faith. She's a believer just like we are. And so I'm sure she'll be a blessing to you and your family as we navigate these deep waters of the COVID-19 virus. But we're knowing that we will come out glorious on the other side. Amen. We appreciate you guys for tuning in. Thank you so much. We appreciate you. Have a great day.